Commander Elias Vega smoothed the front of his Federation dress uniform as the transport glided toward the Krathine Palace. The massive structure of shimmering obsidian crystal dominated the skyline of Tharos Prime, its spires reaching like dark fingers into the amber sky. "First diplomatic assignment to Krathine space?" asked the pilot, catching Elias' wide-eyed reflection in the viewport. "That obvious?" Elias smiled. At 34, he was young for his rank, but 15 years in Federation intelligence had honed his skills and his poker face. This apparent slip was calculated, let them think him an inexperienced diplomat. "The palace takes everyone's breath away the first time," the pilot continued. "Just remember to avoid eye contact with the Krathine elites unless spoken to, and whatever you do, don't acknowledge the servants. They're sensitive about their property." Elias nodded, swallowing his distaste. The Federation had been trying to pressure the Krathine Empire to abandon their practice of indentured servitude for decades, with little success. But tonight's banquet, ostensibly celebrating trade negotiations, was cover for his true mission, assessing rumors of weapons development that violated interstellar treaties. The transport docked at a private landing pad, and Elias was greeted by a tall, gaunt Krathine official with the pale blue skin and ridge-lined features characteristic of their species. "Commander Vega, I am Tharek's chief diplomatic officer to Viceroy Krell. The Viceroy extends his welcome and hopes you find your accommodations satisfactory. The banquet begins in 2 hours." Elias was led through corridors of polished stone and guided to his quarters. The room was opulent, with high ceilings and furnishings that seemed designed for beings larger than humans. A servant stood silently in the corner, a woman with copper-toned skin and long black hair pulled tightly back. She wore the gray uniform of palace staff, her eyes downcast. "This one will attend to your needs," Tharek said dismissively. "Simply speak your requirements aloud." After Tharex departed, Elias studied the woman discreetly. She appeared human, or at least humanoid, though many species in the galaxy shared similar features. Her stillness was unnerving, trained immobility. "You can relax," he said gently. "What's your name?" The woman's eyes flickered up briefly, then down again. "This one is designated Myra, sir." The formality in her voice couldn't hide a subtle accent that suggested education. Something about her seemed out of place. "Thank you, Myra. I don't require anything at the moment." Her shoulders remained tense. "This one is instructed to prepare you for the banquet, sir." Elias sighed. "Very well, I'll freshen up first." In the refresher, he activated his subdermal communicator. "Eagle to Nest, I've arrived. Initial assessment, security is tight but standard. We'll report after the banquet." The reception hall glittered with crystalline chandeliers and was filled with Krathine nobility and elaborate regalia. Elias mingled, collecting trivial information while looking for opportunities to probe deeper. He noticed Myra moving among the guests with a serving tray, her movements precise and unremarkable, designed to be invisible. Viceroy Krell, a massive Krathine with ornate facial ridges accentuated by jeweled piercings, finally approached. "Commander Vega, we rarely entertain Federation representatives in our private residence. Consider it a sign of our evolving relationship." "The Federation appreciates the gesture, Viceroy. Your palace is remarkable. Built by my great-grandfather using the finest craftsmen from across our territories." Krell's mouth twitched in what passed for a Krathine smile. "Some of their descendants still serve here." As they spoke, Elias watched Myra approach with a tray of drinks. When she offered one to a Krathine official, the alien's massive hand shot out, grabbing her wrist. "This is not the vintage I requested," he hissed. "Forgiveness, Master Dravix," Myra whispered, eyes downcast. The official's hand tightened until she winced. "Perhaps a night in disciplined quarters would improve your memory." Elias tensed, but protocol prevented interference. Then, as Myra turned to leave, her eyes briefly met his. In that fleeting moment, he saw not fear or submission, but calculation and intelligence, a mind assessing, analyzing. Those were not the eyes of someone born to servitude. Later, as the banquet wound down, Elias slipped away from the main hall, ostensibly headed toward his quarters, but taking a different turn. The palace schematics he'd memorized included servant passages, and he needed to know more about the woman whose eyes had revealed such depth. He found her in a small utility room, organizing serving trays. She startled when he entered, immediately lowering her gaze. Sir requires something. Elias closed the door. You can drop the act, we're alone. Her posture remained rigid. This one does not understand. I saw you tonight, the real you, just for a moment. He stepped closer. You're not what you appear to be. Sir is mistaken, she whispered, but her voice trembled slightly. I'm here to help if you need it. The Federation. The Federation cannot help, she interrupted, her facade cracking. Her eyes met his directly now, intense and urgent. No one can. Please leave before you're seen speaking with me. The door suddenly slid open. Tharex stood there, his elongated features twisted in suspicion. Commander Vega, these service areas are not for guests. If you require assistance, you need only ask. I was looking for the gardens, Elias lied smoothly. I seem to have taken a wrong turn. Indeed, I'll escort you back to your quarters. Tharex's gaze shifted to Myra, and you will report to Overseer Vanks immediately. Fear flashed across Myra's face before her expression went blank again. As Elias was led away, he glanced back to see another Krathine guard enter the room, roughly grasping her arm. In his quarters, Elias paced restlessly. His mission parameters didn't include interfering with domestic Krathine matters, but something about Myra's situation felt connected to his assignment. He accessed his secure datapad, searching Federation intelligence records for any mention of human servants in the Krathine Palace. The search yielded nothing, but a facial recognition scan initiated through his ocular implant during the banquet had captured Myra's features. He ran the image through the database and waited. Minutes later, a result appeared that sent a chill through him. Dr. Mirabel Voss, Federation xenophysicist, reported missing 3 years ago after her research vessel disappeared near the Krathine border. Elias stared at the image of the woman, confident, brilliant, her eyes alive with the same intelligence he'd glimpsed earlier. According to her file, she'd been leading a classified research mission studying unusual radiation patterns from a Krathine mining operation. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. He quickly shut down the datapad and opened the door. Myra stood there, a fresh bruise darkening her cheek, her eyes darting nervously down the corridor. Please, she whispered, I don't have much time. If you meant what you said about helping me, I need to show you something. Elias pulled her inside, their hands touching briefly. An electric current seemed to pass between them as their eyes met again. No pretense now, just two people recognizing something in each other that neither could yet name. I know who you are, Dr. Voss, he said quietly. Her eyes widened. Then you know why they can never let me leave alive. Myra's hand flew to her mouth. How did you? Federation intelligence, Elias said, gently guiding her away from the door. Your disappearance is still an open case. Dr. Mirabel Voss, leading xenophysicist, last seen 3 years ago when your research vessel vanished near Krathine space. She sank onto the edge of a chair, her shoulders dropping as if released from an invisible weight. For the first time since he'd seen her, she allowed her servant's demeanor to fall away completely. 3 years, she whispered. It feels like a lifetime. Elias knelt before her, careful not to touch her again despite a sudden, inexplicable urge to brush away the tear sliding down her cheek. What happened to your ship, your crew? Her eyes darkened. They're dead, all of them. We detected unusual radiation from a supposedly abandoned moon. Official records listed it as a decommissioned mining operation, but our readings suggested something else. When we investigated, Krathine warships appeared. They claimed we had violated their sovereign territory. Your mission was sanctioned. It doesn't matter, her voice hardened. They boarded us, executed my security team immediately. They kept the scientists alive for questioning. Elias' jaw tightened. And the others, the rest of your science team? Gone, Myra looked away. They realized I was the lead researcher, so they kept me. The others were disposed of when they provided no useful information. The detached way she spoke told Elias more about her trauma than any emotional display could have. He'd seen it before in survivors of extreme situations. This clinical distance was how she'd stayed sane. What did they want from you? My research. I'd been studying a particular type of radiation that could potentially be weaponized. The Federation was investigating it for shielding technology, defensive purposes only. The Krathine, she paused. They saw other applications. And that's what they're building on that moon. Elias' mind raced. His mission to investigate weapons development suddenly had a face, hers. Yes, but it's worse than you think. Myra reached into a hidden pocket in her servant's uniform and extracted a tiny data crystal no larger than her fingernail. This is what I needed to show you. I've been collecting evidence, smuggling out bits of data whenever I was assigned to clean the scientists' quarters. Elias took the crystal. How did you manage to survive this long? I made myself valuable, translated complex scientific texts, helped solve technical problems. A bitter smile touched her lips. Eventually, they moved me to the palace as a servant when they needed my expertise close at hand but hidden from foreign visitors. Elias inserted the crystal into his secure data pad. Encrypted files appeared on the screen, schematics, formulas, test results. This is extensive. The weapon they're building could destabilize star systems, and she hesitated. There's more, information about who they've been testing it on. Elias looked up sharply. Testing. The Ardelian system. Remember the natural disaster that destroyed their colony world 2 years ago? That was them? Elias felt sick. The Ardelians had been a peaceful species, their colony home to over 6 million souls. We need to get this to Federation headquarters immediately. Myra shook her head. You don't understand. I'm implanted with a tracker. If I leave the palace grounds, it signals an alarm and releases a toxin, and the Viceroy himself oversees my work. He knows exactly what I know, which means he'd recognize that these files came from me. Elias placed a hand over hers, his touch gentle but electrifying. Then we need to remove the tracker and create a distraction. The intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. For 3 years, no one had looked at her as a person, let alone with such determination. Why risk yourself for me? She asked softly. Beyond the obvious intelligence value. A smile touched his lips. Let's just say I've always had a weakness for brilliant women trapped in impossible situations. Despite everything, Myra felt warmth spread through her chest. There's a medical bay in the East Wing, limited security at night. I could. A chime from the door interrupted them. They froze. Commander Vega, Tharix's voice came through the communication panel. The Viceroy requests your presence for a private discussion. Elias squeezed Myra's hand before rising. Tell the Viceroy I'll join him shortly. I'll hide the data crystal, Myra whispered. Meet me tomorrow at 200 hours near the medical bay. Take the service corridor behind the library. The guards will be changing shifts. Her intelligence and resourcefulness impressed him anew. I've been planning an escape for months. I just never had a way to get the data out, or a reason to believe I could survive outside these walls. As she moved toward the door, Elias caught her arm. Wait. In a swift motion, he removed a small device from his collar. A universal key, Federation issue. It should work on most secure areas in the palace. Their fingers brushed as she took it, and this time neither pulled away. For a moment they stood close enough to feel each other's breath. Without thinking, Elias raised his hand to her cheek, his thumb gently touching the bruise there. I'm going to get you out of here, he murmured. Something shifted in her eyes, hope perhaps, or something more complex. She leaned slightly into his touch. Be careful with Krell, he's more perceptive than he appears. When she slipped out, the room felt suddenly empty. The Viceroy's private study was a testament to Krathine opulence, rare artifacts, ancient weapons, and a massive window overlooking the capital city. Commander, Krell greeted him without turning from the view. I trust you're finding your stay comfortable. Very, Elias replied, studying the Viceroy's hulking form silhouetted against the night sky. Though I wonder why you requested this private audience. Krell turned, his scaled features unreadable. I prefer directness in my dealings. Your Federation sends a military intelligence officer disguised as a diplomat. I'm curious about the real purpose of your visit. Elias kept his expression neutral. I assure you, Viceroy. Please, Krell waved a massive hand. Let's not waste time with denials. I know who you are, Commander, just as I know about your interest in my servant. Elias tensed, reaching casually toward the concealed weapon in his sleeve. No need for that, Krell said, moving to a table where he poured 2 drinks. I merely wish to understand, why is Federation intelligence taking such interest in a simple servant? I was looking for the gardens, Elias repeated his earlier excuse. Nothing more. Is that so? Krell handed him a glass of amber liquid. Did you know that we implant all our servants with monitoring devices? They record all conversations. Elias felt ice form in his stomach, but kept his expression neutral. A rather extreme measure for household staff. Indeed, and yet sometimes necessary. Krell sipped his drink. Fortunately for you, there seems to have been a malfunction in that particular servant's device this evening, a curious coincidence. The implied threat hung in the air between them. I must warn you, Commander, some boundaries once crossed cannot be uncrossed. Some interests once made known cannot be forgotten. Krell's voice remained pleasant, but his eyes were cold. I would hate for diplomatic relations to be strained over. Inappropriate fraternization. Elias inclined his head. I understand, Viceroy, no boundaries will be crossed. Excellent, you're free to go. As Elias left, he knew he'd just been served both a warning and a message. Krell suspected something but lacked proof. For now. At precisely 200 hours, Elias made his way through the darkened service corridor. Palace security was minimal at this hour, but he proceeded with caution. When he reached the medical bay, Myra was already waiting, her servant's gray uniform exchanged for darker clothing. You made it, she whispered, relief evident in her voice. Did anyone see you? She shook her head. I've mapped the blind spots in their security system. Follow me. The medical bay was sterile and quiet. Myra moved with confidence to a diagnostic scanner. This can locate the tracker and deactivate it temporarily. We'll have about 6 hours before it reactivates and releases the toxin. 6 hours to remove it permanently and get you off planet, Elias said, helping her onto the examination table. As the scanner hummed to life, Myra reached for his hand. If this goes wrong. It won't, he squeezed her fingers reassuringly. But if it does, she insisted, the data crystal alone is enough to prove what they've done. Promise me you'll get it to the Federation. Their eyes locked. I promise, but we're both getting out of here. The scanner located the tracker embedded near her spine. Deactivating it would be simple. Removing it would be the challenge. I can't do this myself, Myra said, showing him the surgical tools. You'll have to. Elias had basic field medical training, but this was well beyond his expertise. Myra, I could paralyze you if I make a mistake. Then don't make one. Her smile was tense but genuine. I trust you, Elias. The use of his first name, so intimate after the formality she'd been forced to maintain, caught him off guard. He cupped her face in his hands, feeling a connection that defied their brief acquaintance. When did you become Elias to me? He asked softly. When you saw me, she answered simply, not the servant me. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Then, with a boldness born of years of suppression, Myra closed the distance between them. Her lips met his, tentative at first, then with growing hunger. Elias responded immediately, one hand sliding into her hair while the other pulled her closer. The kiss deepened, 3 years of Myra's isolation and loneliness pouring into this one moment of connection. Elias felt an answering need rise within him, not just desire, but a fierce protectiveness that surprised him with its intensity. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Myra rested her forehead against his. I needed to do that, she whispered, just once, in case. Not in case, he interrupted, brushing his thumb across her lower lip. When we're safe, when you're free, there will be more. The moment was shattered by the sudden blare of an alarm. Red lights flashed throughout the medical bay. That's impossible, Myra gasped. The scanner shouldn't have triggered. The door slid open. 4 Krathing guards stood there, weapons raised. Behind them loomed Viceroy Krell, his expression triumphant. Commander Vega, Dr. Voss. His use of Myra's true name made her flinch. I believe we have much to discuss. This is quite the predicament, Viceroy Krell's voice echoed in the detention cell where Elias and Myra had been confined. A Federation officer conspiring with my personal property. The diplomatic implications are fascinating. Elias stood protectively in front of Myra, his posture tense but controlled. Dr. Voss is a Federation citizen illegally detained after her research vessel was attacked in neutral space. Krell's ridged face contorted into what might have been amusement. Is that the story she told you? How convenient that there were no other survivors to corroborate it. The Federation has records of her mission, Elias countered. Records can be falsified. Krell turned his attention to Myra. Tell me, Doctor, did you share our little project with the commander? Did you tell him about your willing participation? Myra stepped forward, her eyes flashing with defiance. I never willingly. You designed the radiation focusing chamber, Krell interrupted. Your equations made the weapon viable. Your hands built the prototype. Under threat of torture, she spat, after you murdered my entire crew. Krell shrugged his massive shoulders. Details that will be lost in the diplomatic incident I'm about to create. A Federation spy discovered attempting to sabotage Krathine defense systems with the help of a disgraced scientist seeking revenge. He smiled coldly. The Federation Council will disavow you both to avoid war. Ilias maintained his composure, mind racing through options. The cell was secure but standard Krathine design, if he could create a distraction. Why even bother with this charade? Ilias asked. If you're planning to kill us anyway, why not just do it? Kill you? Krell seemed genuinely surprised. Oh no, Commander, you're far too valuable. Your neural patterns contain access codes to Federation defense networks, and Dr. Voss still has much work to do on our project. He gestured to the guards. Prepare them for transport to the research facility. Use the neural suppressors. I want them conscious but compliant. As one of the guards approached with a device resembling a neural disruptor, Ilias made his move. The subdermal implant in his wrist had been recording everything and transmitting it directly to Federation channels through quantum entanglement. All he needed was to activate the emergency beacon. He lunged forward as if attacking Krell, knowing the guards would intervene. When the first guard grabbed him, Ilias twisted, pressing his wrist against the guard's armor, exactly where the activation signal would penetrate. 3 quick pulses, emergency extraction protocol. The guard struck him hard across the face, sending him sprawling to the floor. Myra cried out, rushing to his side only to be roughly pulled back by another guard. Krell looked down at Ilias with disappointment. A futile gesture, Commander. This facility is shielded against all transmissions. Ilias tasted blood but managed a smile. Are you certain about that, Viceroy? Federation intelligence has been developing some interesting technologies lately. A flicker of doubt crossed Krell's features before the lights suddenly cut out. Emergency power activated seconds later, bathing the cell in red. Status report, Krell demanded into his communicator. Perimeter breach on multiple levels, sir, came the panicked reply. Federation signatures detected there inside the palace. Krell's eyes narrowed as he stared at Ilias. You planned this from the beginning. I'm just a diplomat, Ilias said innocently, here to improve relations. The Viceroy backed toward the door. Secure them. I want them both alive when we evacuate. As Krell departed, leaving 4 guards with neural disruptors, the building shook with distant explosions. Ilias caught Myra's eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod. 3 years of servitude had taught her to watch for subtle signals. She understood immediately. When the next explosion rocked the detention level, Ilias dropped to the floor. Myra followed suit just as the cell door blew inward, sending the guards flying. Through the smoke, armored figures rushed in, Federation Special Operations. Commander Vega, the lead operative called. Extraction Team Alpha, are you injured? Negative, Ilias replied, helping Myra to her feet. But Dr. Voss has an implanted tracker that needs immediate removal. The operative nodded. Medical team standing by on our transport. We need to move now. We've got a 10-minute window before Krathine reinforcements lock down the entire system. They moved swiftly through the palace corridors, the extraction team forming a protective formation around them. Alarms blared and occasional weapons fire echoed through the halls as they encountered resistance. The data crystal, Myra whispered urgently to Ilias as they ran. It's still in your quarters. Ilias tapped the team leader's shoulder. We need to make a detour. Negative, Commander. Strict extraction protocols. That's an order, Lieutenant, Ilias said firmly. The evidence we came for is in my assigned quarters. Without it, this mission is a failure. The lieutenant hesitated only briefly. 2-minute detour, no more. When they reached Ilias' quarters, he went directly to the hidden compartment where he'd secured the crystal after Myra had given it to him. Their eyes met as he retrieved it, a moment of shared triumph. Let's go home, he said softly. The extraction shuttle rocketed away from the palace as Krathine defense systems came online. In the medical bay, Federation doctors worked quickly to remove the tracking device from Myra's spine while Elias held her hand. The neural connections are complex, the chief medical officer explained. But we can neutralize it safely. You're lucky, a few millimeters in either direction and it would have been integrated with your central nervous system. Myra's eyes never left Elias' face. I'm beginning to believe in luck again. The ship shuddered as it absorbed weapons fire from pursuing Krathine vessels. Hang on, the pilot's voice came over the intercom. Preparing for jump to FTL as soon as we clear the gravity well. Elias squeezed Myra's hand, almost there. Got it, the doctor announced, holding up a small metallic device glistening with blood. Tracker removed, sealing the incision now. Myra's relief was palpable. 3 years, she whispered. 3 years of being property, of being nothing, and now. And now you're free, Elias finished, brushing her hair back from her face. The ship lurched violently as a Krathine blast caught their shields. Warning lights flashed throughout the medical bay. Shield integrity at 40%, the pilot reported. 30 seconds to jump point. Commander, the communications officer called from the cockpit. Incoming transmission from the lead Krathine vessel. It's Viceroy Krell. Elias nodded. Put it through. Krell's face appeared on the view screen, his features contorted with rage. This act of aggression will not stand, Commander. The Krathine Empire will consider this a declaration of war. I think not, Viceroy, Elias replied calmly. By now, Federation intelligence has received my full report, including Dr. Voss's evidence of your illegal weapons program and the genocide of the Ardelian colony. Krell faltered. You have no proof. We have everything, Viceroy. Your research data, test results, communications logs, even your personal authorization for the Ardelian test. Elias' voice hardened. The Federation Council is convening an emergency session as we speak. I suspect the rest of the Galactic Alliance will be very interested in their findings. You're bluffing, Krell snarled, but uncertainty had crept into his eyes. 10 seconds to jump, the pilot announced. Elias smiled. I look forward to seeing you at the War Crimes Tribunal, Viceroy. As Krell began to shout, the transmission cut off. The stars outside the viewports stretched into streaks of light as the ship jumped to FTL speed. Myra let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Is it really over? Elias gathered her carefully into his arms, mindful of her recent surgery. This part is. Now comes the diplomacy, the tribunals, the testimony. It won't be easy. Nothing worth doing ever is, she said, resting her head against his chest. 3 weeks later, aboard the Federation diplomatic vessel Horizon, Myra stood at the observation deck, watching the stars streak by. She wore a simple blue dress, the first real clothing she'd chosen for herself in 3 years. Her hair hung loose around her shoulders, and the haunted look in her eyes had begun to fade. She sensed Elias before she saw him, a new awareness that had developed between them during their time together. The Council's vote was unanimous, he said, coming to stand beside her. The evidence was irrefutable. A peacekeeping force is already on its way to secure the weapon research facility, and indictments have been issued for Krell and his senior officials. And the Krathine government. In chaos, the exposure of the Ardelian genocide has triggered internal rebellion. The lower houses are demanding the Viceroy's resignation. Elias placed a hand on the rail beside hers, their fingers almost touching. Your testimony made the difference, especially about the other planned targets. Myra shuddered at the memory. 2 billion lives on Proxima Colony would have been next, all to test a weapon they could never control. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the universe streak past. The Federation Science Division has offered you reinstatement, Elias said finally. With a promotion. They're establishing a new research institute focused on defensive applications of your radiation theories. A small smile touched her lips. I heard I'm considering it. Only considering? Elias raised an eyebrow. Myra turned to face him fully. I've spent 3 years being told what to do, where to go, how to live. For the first time, I have choices again. Her expression softened, including personal ones. Elias took her hand, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. I've been reassigned. Special envoy to the Galactic Alliance Security Council. They're creating a task force to investigate other potential weapons violations. Sounds important. It is, and, he hesitated. I could use a scientific consultant, someone who understands the technology, who's seen firsthand what these weapons can do. Myra's eyes sparkled with amusement. Are you offering me a job, Commander Vega? I'm offering you a partnership, he replied, his voice dropping lower as he stepped closer. Professional and otherwise, if you're interested. In answer, Myra reached up and pulled him down to her, their lips meeting in a kiss that held both passion and promise. Unlike their desperate embrace in the palace, this one spoke of future possibilities, of healing, of time. When they finally broke apart, Elias rested his forehead against hers. I take it that's a yes. Myra laughed, the sound still new and precious after years of silence. It's a definite maybe. I do have other offers to consider. Oh, he raised an eyebrow, playing along. Anyone I should be concerned about? Well, there's this military intelligence officer who keeps looking at me like I'm the most fascinating puzzle in the galaxy. Her fingers traced the line of his jaw. He's quite persistent. Sounds like competition. The worst kind, she agreed solemnly. He saw me when no one else did. When I was invisible, he found me. Her expression grew serious. How do you compete with someone like that? Elias drew her closer, his arms encircling her waist. You don't, you simply surrender. As the stars streaked past the viewport, Myra smiled against his lips. I think I can live with that. Behind them, the ship's engines hummed as they traveled deeper into Federation space, away from the shadows of the past, and toward a future neither had dared to imagine just weeks before. A future where a servant with knowing eyes and a soldier with a compassionate heart found their way home in each other's arms.